Today's session is going to focus on admissions, assessments, and consents. You certainly can add to the chat or to the Q&A throughout. If you have any questions, we'll save a little bit of time at the end as well. I am recording the session, and we'll send out that link. That'll be distributed afterwards. And let's go ahead and dive in. So starting, guys, with admissions, some of what we'll do will flow again from admissions through to assessments and consents. Some of this may be review for you. Some of you have maybe never seen this, but we'll kind of go in that order, in that sequence. And the plan is to look at some of the security and configuration around those areas individually, look at an overview, and then look at the reporting that is available in OnTarget around those three pieces. So starting with admissions, most importantly around security is the configuration of roles. So again, this is a role-dependent configuration. The majority of this is happening in 3 tabs: desktop security, data security, and under reports. So starting under the desktop security tab, it's where we grant permission or allow for access. So we're looking at, again, all of this is going to be right here under the client section. So if we expand client history, we're talking about admissions. So any role that needs access to that, that's where you're going to actually grant that access. Related to that is data security. This is one area under client admission where you can actually restrict the access for a particular role. So again, I think about roles like DSPs or HabTechs, or roles where you would want to make information read-only for admission info, or potentially some of that info obscured or denied. So we do have that ability here under the desktop security, and if we expand client admission. So for instance, all of these sections relate to fields with admissions. So you could make all of those areas read-only. You could make certain areas denied completely. But again, desktop security is where you're granting that permission, giving that access. Data security is where you are restricting. And then finally, the reporting piece, again, this is just under configuration. The reporting piece would be under admissions, which I believe, yep, right here at the top, admissions history tracking. The main thing that you're after here is the can run. That's what gives anybody in that particular role that you're adjusting the ability to run the admission and history tracking report, which we'll take a look at in just a minute. All right, so fairly simple, straightforward with configuration of admissions. Let's go ahead and kind of dive in and take a look at admissions. So we want to look at both the adding and managing of admissions, and then ultimately reporting. That's probably the most powerful part of adding this info, is being able to pull that information back out. So if we just look at our test client here, and we open up that record, everything we're talking about today is going to be under this history section. And it's really these 3 tabs: admissions, assessments, and consents. So you can see some admissions that have already been added in here. So we have the type, we have the cost center, we have the date of the event, and then you do have some other optional fields here: contact date, referral. You can select a reason here. So for instance, let's say that we have, and you have different types, of course, let's say that we had a transfer from one program to another. And let's say that we went from let's say one cost center to another. Say we went from maybe Charlotte to Raleigh. And let's say that that happened on 10/1. We want to document that. And then we could give a reason here, right? So we could say, yeah, they moved. So they relocated, they moved, and that would be a transfer from one program to another. So you've got a lot of options here. Again, the types that you have access to. These cannot be, just kind of give you a note, a heads up here. The types are not configurable within OnTarget, within the UI or within configure section. However, our support team does have some ability back end to edit this, to manage this. So if you're really diving deep into admissions and you find that you need some additional types, or you would like to capture some additional detail, maybe this is just not going to work for you. We do have some ability to adjust that on the back end, so keep that in mind. So with that in mind, all of that information added, again, you can add notes here. You can give reasons, dates, type of referral. Certainly you can document cost center movement, movement between programs, all of that good stuff. And then finally, related to admissions is the reporting piece. So if we go to reports, assuming that the role has access, that you've granted as the security admin, you've granted access to the reports via the roles, you will then go to reports, clinical, and we're talking about the admission history tracking. All right. And so if I just run this wide open, just kind of give you an idea here. You do have all of these parameters. Actually, I'm just going to run for active clients. So I'm going to put a Y for active. You can restrict this to a specific admission date range. You can put a Y to include reasons, which I'll do. That's going to give some of that narrative. You can filter down to the specific admission type. Let me just kind of show you this too on filtering. So you could say transfer, but I also want to see admissions. And if you notice there, I hit the plus. I could even restrict it all the way down and say, yep, I also want to see discharges. So you do have that at your disposal. These filters all kind of work in the same way in this modal. So once you got those parameters set in, you can hit run. And so just to kind of give you an idea of what this looks like, kind of data we're pulling back, we can see first and last name. We can see the type was an admission, again, a discharge, a transfer. We can see the date that occurred. If there is a specific program, that can be super, super useful. I know, especially in the mental health side of things, if I'm moving from one program to another, or maybe movement to a day program, that would be a great use of this, capturing that. And then, of course, we get some of that narrative, some of that description that's been added in the notes. And then, of course, as with all of our reports, you can export this, take it to Excel. If you want to take it to print-friendly PDF, you can do that as well. All right, guys. I'll pause just very quickly before we move on to assessments. Any questions so far? All right, looks like we're all good. And again, we'll save a little bit of time at the end. All right, guys, moving on to assessments. Let's cover very briefly the configuration around assessments. This is going to be probably even shorter. So again, we're back here at desktop security. You've gone to security, configure roles. You selected the specific role or roles that you're wanting to grant access to. That's done again under desktop security. And then we're talking about assessments. So you're going to grant the access there. One thing to note, there is no restriction here. So with admissions, we did have this ability to go to data security and actually impose restrictions, read-only or denied. Under admissions, we do not currently have the same functionality for our assessments. So just keep that in mind. If you are granting access, if you're giving access to a particular role, to particular staff, that simply just can't be restricted at this point. Moving on to the reporting, the report that you're after here, if that particular role needs access, is the client assessments. And again, you're looking at that first column. That's really what you're after, is the ability to run that report, client assessments. So you would check that, hit save, make sure they've got access, and then they would have access to reports. So jumping back to Charlie Brown, let's take a look at assessments now. Got a bunch of assessments in here. We've actually got some that I think have been updated recently for Charlie. So we have things like risk assessment. We have CCAs. We have initial assessments, pre-ETs, CCAs again, psych evals, any of those assessments that you guys can think of. We do allow for a reason to be added. So adding a new one is super simple. Just click on add. You'll see the drop down. I'll talk about managing this drop down in just a few minutes. You've got, again, a reason that could be added here. You've got a date of completion if that applies, and then you certainly have a due date. Some of these are optional, so you don't have to put those in. One thing to note, and I will jump back to admissions quickly after this too, DMS. This is super, super important. This is where you can scan and upload a copy of that assessment. So if you've got a hard copy of a psych eval, of a CCA, a risk assessment, CIS, any of those types of evaluations, assessments, you can actually click here and you can give it really, really good description, click on browse, find that file, and then upload it. So that is the document management system, the DMS. This is not in the scope of today's session. This may be a future session, but the plus minus here, this would be the web form launching. So we do have some customers that are using web forms and assessments that have been developed as web forms. So that's what you're seeing here. Tasks. So one other super great feature here is if you needed to send a reminder, and this may be a reminder to self. This could be, look, I need to update this assessment, right? And this needs to happen as of 12/1. So I want this reminder to go out mid-month next month. So you can send that. That's going to hold, the system's going to hold that. It's going to go out on that reminder date, and that would show up on my task dashboard. I did miss this earlier, admissions. There you go. That's that DMS icon. So if you've got a discharge paper, if you've got admissions, or you've got referrals that you need to upload, that is going to give you that ability. Also that tasking. So these icons will become very familiar to you if you're not as familiar with OnTarget with use. So yeah, admissions, assessments. Related to assessments, let me show you this real quick, guys. So if you need to, this is related to that drop down for assessments. If you go to configure, list configuration, clients, and assessments, you can manage the types within OnTarget. That even includes ones that you're not using. So if you're a brand new customer, we typically will pre-populate some of the most frequently used assessments in the year. But if you see some in here and you're not going to use them, you're never going to use them, they simply don't apply to you or your agency, you can delete those if they've never been used. And then certainly if you need to add a new assessment that you do not see in here, you can do that right there by clicking on Add Assessment and plugging that in, hit Update, and now you've got that saved. All right, as far as the reporting piece, that again is under clinical. All three of these are under the clinical section. So reports, clinical, client assessments. All right, for this one, I'm going to say I want to see active, and maybe I want to restrict this based on due date. This is a really, really good use of this report. So as you've got assessments that are coming due, as you're really wanting to kind of drill down month by month to see what's coming due, what do I need to get an update on, this is a really good way to do that. So if I want to kind of just take a look at a month, just kind of slice that, I can plug that in, hit Run Report, and here we go. I can see that Charlie Brown, I've got a whole bunch coming due tomorrow. I've got a lot of work to do. Hopefully I can get that done quickly. And this is what that report looks like. First, last name, cost center. We see a description. If I've added a score, if that's applicable, issues, obviously the due date, date of completion, is it active or not? And then, of course, the standard export options. All right, guys, we're making good time. I'm going to keep pushing through. Let's look finally at consents, and then we'll see if we've got any questions in the chat, and we'll go ahead and wrap up the session. So finally, under consents and configuring roles, let's go right back again to our security admin and desktop security. Again, everything that we've been talking about is right here under clients and under history. And if I want to grant access to consents, to the consents tab, it's right there. And just like with assessment, we do not currently have the ability to restrict access or make consents read-only. So the data security currently does not apply to consents. The last section here, reports. So the one that you're after here is client consents. So it should be right there in the list. Every database should have this. So again, you're looking at that first column, the ability to run the report. You want to make sure that's checked and then hit save. And then let me go ahead and jump to list configuration. Let's go ahead and do that before we do the overview and then ultimately the reports piece. So clients and consents. So again, I went to configure, list configuration, clients, and consents. And so much like the assessments, you do have the ability to manage this as an end user. So if you see any consents that you're not currently using and they're just pre-populated in here, certainly feel free to delete them if they don't apply to your agency. And then if you've got any new ones that need to be added, you can click on Add Consent, get that plugged in, hit Update, and now that's going to show up in the dropdown under Consents. And let's kind of wrap this up. We are here with Charlie Brown under the Consents tab. And you can see here we've got some consents that have been updated. Actually, no, we've got some again that are going to be expiring. So we see an expiration date there. You can set, again, this is how you add a consent. Just click on Add. That drop down is populated from the list configuration that we just did. You can add in a description if you need to. That isn't required, but it's optional. You can plug in that expiration date if that applies. And then reminder date is a great one. So what we're seeing here is that this reminder would have gone out on the 30th of September for the authorization to administer medications that is expiring tomorrow. So hopefully, again, the administrator, the program director got that message through tasks, and they were on that and getting that all done. Finally, DMS, as we said before, that's where you can upload scanned copies of any of the consents that you've got. And again, maybe in a later webinar, we'll dig a little deeper into web forms. All right, guys, and then the last piece, I do want to just show you the reporting around consents. So we're back here at reports. Everything, again, we're talking about is under clinical, and then we're saying client consents. Again, I'm going to filter just to our active clients, and I want to look at what is expiring again in October. Click Run Report. And as you can see, again, we've got our friend Charlie Brown. We've got a whole bunch of stuff expiring for Charlie Brown and some things that have already expired. Export options, Excel, PDF, all of the standard fare. And that is it, guys.